What's going on, everybody? Jamie Cheerio here. I'm excited for this video because we're going to teach you guys about annual reviews and what it can mean for your client. So if you're watching this video right now, somebody has filled out something inside of LeadChamp Pro that says they are ready for their annual review. They received a notification from the system letting them know that their annual review is coming up, and they may be scheduled an appointment with you, or you're just wanting to learn, how an annual review works. So obviously we've got clients that an annual review means that we're going to review their policy at least one time a year. And when somebody goes through an annual review, it doesn't always mean that we're going to be selling more insurance. However, there are a lot of chances to be able to upsell, get referrals, and continue to move on and put them in a stronger position. So when it comes to an annual review, I'm going to walk you guys through some really basic points of how to go ahead and conduct an annual review, what the purpose of an annual review is, and how this can help you add more premium per home, as well as help you ensure that you continue to get that renewal every single year on permanent products. So the number one thing with the annual review is to make sure that the client knows about the current policy that they have. The number one thing I can tell you to do is to strengthen what you've already sold, to make them understand that what they did previously was a really good decision. So it's really easy, especially if you sell somebody, for instance, an AMERICO policy. You can jump into the back office and you can click on the client. You can go to policy documents. You can actually pull up the actual physical policy. The first thing that I do when I get on with somebody for an annual review is I want to know, do you still have your physical policy? If they say, yes, great, awesome. If they say no, I want to go ahead and download that PDF, email it to them, call up AMERICO, get a new physical policy sent to them, and really just explain the importance of why they need to make sure that they know where their policy is and they put it in a safe place and they make sure their beneficiary knows exactly where it is. So that's one of the number one things that I always want to make sure I explain is, do you have your physical policy? If no, let's get you a new one and let's put it somewhere that your beneficiary knows where it is. Because if you don't know where it is, how in the world is your son or your wife or your daughter or your niece going to find this policy when that day comes? So it's so important to do that. So that's number one. Next, I really want to make sure that there hasn't been any changes. Has your address changed? Has your phone number, your email, have any of your beneficiaries changed? And then obviously, if any of those things have changed, we go ahead and we submit those off to the carrier. Typically, the carrier is going to make them fill out something, electronic sign, fax it in, whatever it is, and then send them an updated policy with the new beneficiary or the new mailing address. And that's super important for us to make sure that we have it. Then I want to go and I want to look at what we actually got for them. So let's say it was a $25,000 whole life policy and they're paying $83 a month. I want to walk through it and explain, okay, so you had $25,000 worth of whole life. This is immediate coverage, meaning there was no waiting period. The payment was $83 a month, and just really break it down and then reaffirm why did they get this coverage in the first place. So if I remember correctly, what I have here in my notes is that you got this coverage because you wanted to make sure that when you died, you wanted to leave some money behind for your son to take care of your funeral, your final expenses, and anything left over just to pay off any remaining debts. Is that correct? Okay, great. So I want to just reaffirm that they made a really good decision on their current policy. Now, there's a couple of different directions that you can go when it comes to an annual review. And one of the number one things that I like to do, especially in the state of the world, is I like to talk about inflation. I like to talk about what's going on in the world, how all of the industry experts and financial analysts are talking about how inflation is going through the roof. Gallon of gas, gallon of milk, everything's getting more expensive. So, Mary, wouldn't you agree that even final expenses, mortgage protection, all of these things are going to get more expensive too? So my typical line is, hey, Mary, you watch the news lately? Yes, no, it doesn't really matter what they say. Hey, I don't really like watching the news either because every time that you turn it on, all they talk about is inflation and everything getting more expensive. And what the industry experts are telling us is that if you have a $25,000 policy, in order to pace with inflation, 10, 15, 20 years from now, that $25,000 policy really should be, a $35,000 or a $40,000 policy. Does that make sense? And everybody says, yes, that makes sense. And they're either going to say, can I look at what more coverage is? Or they're going to say, I really can't afford that right now. And either way is totally fine. But when they say, yes, I want to look at more coverage, it's one of the easiest add-on sales that you can do. Reviewing if their beneficiary got coverage in the first place. Reviewing if their spouse got coverage. Asking about if they have grandkids and if their grandchildren have coverage. You already have this client. They've been on the books for almost a year, over a year, depending on when you're doing this annual review. You have a rapport and you have trust built with this person where you can ask deeper questions and you can try to solve more problems. So the number one thing is to make sure that they have their policy, that they understand it, you strengthen it. If they need to make any changes to it, and then at that point, we now try to search for other problems that we can then solve as their insurance agent. Hey, remember, Mary, I'm your agent for life. God forbid something happens. I want you to make sure that your son has my phone number. I want to make sure that your son has my contact information. And this is where we can start getting into referrals. And obviously, if you haven't set up the emergency response network, which we're going to talk about in a different video, you can set that up too. So annual reviews are incredible. Very, very basic breakdown of how to do it is really, again, it's one of the easiest appointments to book as well. So, with our system's going to book that appointment for you for the most part. But if you're calling up somebody because they haven't answered, hey, Mary, I sat down with you back in January of 2023 and we got that policy with America for $25,000. It's $83 a month. Does that ring a bell? Do you remember me? Okay, great. Hey, it's going to take about 5 or 10 minutes. You're just scheduled for your annual review for the year. We're going to walk through your policy, make sure you're still in the best position possible, make sure there's been no changes, and see if there's any new products or any add-ons, things that can help strengthen your position. It'll take 5 or 10 minutes. Are you working tomorrow? You got any doctor's appointments tomorrow? Yes, no, okay, great. I got a morning or an afternoon. Which one works better? Morning? Okay, great. I'll call you at 10. It's the simplest, easiest appointment book. And when you have somebody where the need is there, it's one of the easiest add-on sales. So annual reviews are a major key, and most of us never do them. It took me 3 years before I finally decided to start doing annual reviews. And it's an incredible, incredible way for you to boost your book of business and to ensure those renewals are going to be there for years to come. So I hope that this helps. And if you have any questions, please reach out.